In this episode, we welcome back James Price. He's going to share with us real-world lessons learned on when shit hits the fan in refugee camps. Howdy and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 191. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole. Safe and sound. Today is an exciting day as we welcome back James Price. Today's going to be an interesting episode and an unusual one because we're actually going to take a look at what happens after the shit hits the fan and what the real story is of how people end up surviving it. With that, James, dude, welcome back to In the Rabbit Hole.
Hey, Ron, man, it's great to be back, dude. It's been too long.
And, you know, I do need to preface it that there may be a little bit of a lag today because you are calling in from your super secret bunker on your satellite line. So we've got a little bit of a lag, but I think it'll be all right.
Yeah, hopefully we can fix it in post, or folks will just kind of have to deal with it. But as you know, guys like me can't always get on a nice 60 down line. Yeah. I don't even know what I'd do if I got 60 down now. I'd probably just download like 400 movies.
Too funny.
Hey, so I heard your last podcast. You talking about the 300 blackout and the short-barreled rifle and everything, about how you learned some stuff in the Mobile Scout School about the shorter rifle being a little easier to maneuver.
You know, I do have to blame you for my new addiction to SBRs. So thank you and curse you. It's one of those things I don't think people really appreciate until they work with an SBR, and then it's just like, oh man, this is so much easier to deal with.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I was in Iraq, I had but it was I think it was an AK, and it had like about a 9-10 inch barrel on it with an underfolder. I mean, the difference between maneuvering that within a vehicle and a full-size rifle is like night and day. It makes a ton of difference. You get the rifle up faster. And once you go 9 inches on a barrel, you're fine. Mm-hmm. You're barely losing any velocity. And in general, in the 300 blackout, 9 inch to 16 inch, you're losing less than I believe it's 50 to 100 feet a second. So you're still getting over about 2,007. You're getting about 1,700 still out of a 9 inch barrel, which is pretty unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Also, I heard that you were mentioning that it's not really a rifle made for much past 300 yards. With the 16-inch barrel, I know of guys reaching out past 500 with it. So, I mean, there's some good ammo coming out now for it because of all the ODA and all the SEALs and all the cool guys are using. They're all switching to 300 blackout. They're all using BCM 300 blackout rifles now, and it is the caliber to go to if you're doing vehicle to vehicle takedowns, CQB, and urban warfare under 100 meters. But anyone who does any of those things, from CIA to GRS is using it now. Everyone is a 300 blackout is the way to go. It's just an excellent round. The suppressing capabilities are good, especially if you're shooting from a vehicle. I don't know if you've ever been in a vehicle with some guy lit off right beside you. You pay for it 10 years later.
Oh, I bet. I bet you pay for it right then and there too.
Yeah, with anger. Screaming at the other guy, why are you lighting off next to my ear? And then their response is always, what? I'm like, why are you lighting off beside my ear? What? So it's kind of like that scene in Black Hawk Down where that guy shoots a 60 next to the guy's ear. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much everyone in the car in the armored Suburban for the next 12 hours.
Oh man, that's not fun. So lead us in today. Where are we going with this? We've got shit has hit the fan, and what happens now?
Over the last, say, 5-6 years of my working in humanitarian aid work with DVM HACIF, which is DVM Humanitarian Aid Security Forces, I'm a big person on notebooks, writing things down on a piece of paper with a pen. It's something that was passed to me by the people who mentored me into the shooter business and then later into the humanitarian aid business. I usually have 2 or 3 that notebooks that I fill up just on random notes when I'm on missions, and then about a month or 2 later, I kind of go through it and I write down, catalog anything that I think is a pertinent information that's unique or I didn't know before, or I'd like to pass on to the people I'm mentoring now. And a lot of the stuff are just, it's kind of your basic, shelter, water, food, logistics, safety that you need for any survival situation. But when you're in a refugee situation, whether it be you're fleeing from ISIS in northern Iraq and now you're in an IDP camp, or like the recent hurricanes in the south of the United States, actually not very far from where I am right now, where people or you got to evacuate, they got to go on the road, they're living in hotels, they're living in basically what is stateside IDP, internally displaced person camps by FEMA or churches or areas like that. And the situation is remarkably similar. No matter where you are in the world, when you have nothing, you have nothing. And so it doesn't matter if you're a Christian Iraqi fleeing or guy from Alabama trying to, stay in the basement of a church. Those basic needs and issues that you run into are more or less the same. So I dug through my notes and I found just a few things that maybe don't seem would be something that would really pop out at people when they're thinking, hey, if I got to go mobile, if I got to evacuate, if I got to live out on the road or in a center with hundreds of other people, things that they, probably wouldn't necessarily think about until they're there. And unfortunately, once you're there, it's too late to really do anything about the situation. So this will allow people to be able to write some notes for themselves, do a little planning, pick up a couple cheap supplies, and at least be ready if they would have to go out on the road. Because I think it was 100,000 people are uprooted now because of the hurricanes down south.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's about right.
I mean, that's a lot of people, and I'm willing to bet the majority of them never even thought, especially in North Carolina. I mean, North Kakalaki is, nothing ever happens there as far as serious weather like this, but I mean, they got their butts kicked. I mean, one of the guys, Rob, that was on the photographer for the last aid mission I was on, I mean, his house he had to abandon his house in the middle of it. So this is a normal upper middle class white dude who was like, sent me a message like, hey man, I gotta go. If you don't hear from me in an hour, get a boat and come find me kind of situation. Even though it comes from this third world situation, it's very relevant to what happens in the States. And the real basis of all the training I do is train for the worst, and then anything underneath that, you'll be good. So this is where that information comes from, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The first one, there's a bunch different. Let's go to shelter. So shelter, usually you'll end up being, most of the time you won't be just like stuck in a field with a bunch of people. There'll be centers set up somewhere during some sort of event where you'll have to leave your home and then go somewhere else for safety or food or shelter. Most people think of all the normal things about, having your bug out bag and this and that. But the first thing that you need to do when you're in some sort of an IDP camp or a refugee center or an emergency FEMA shelter or a church shelter or somewhere like that is you need to work out the bathroom situation. Now, from every single place, every single camp, every single refugee center, every IDP camp, one of the first things, sometimes even before food, that they ask us for is they say, hey, all of our toilets don't work. They're overflowing. We have no way to clean it, all these other things. And so that is usually a situation where people don't think in advance of, that they'll need a way to use the bathroom and a way to do it. I mean, if you have 100 people in one place sharing 4 or 5 bathrooms, you'll be lucky in a week if one works. And even the ones that do work, the place is a petri dish. I mean, you're going to get sick going in there, just going in there in general. So I would suggest that you can buy this little portable toilets at Walmart. We have a bunch of them. They're like $30. They cost nothing. You can put any type of little plastic bag in them. If you're going on the road, you got to take your family out. I would avoid using any sort of shared restroom at all because it is just doo-doo everywhere up in that mug. And it's a combination of everyone's doo-doo combined with people who haven't showered for a week, combined with people who have been in contaminated water. They're getting sick. they're spreading disease around. You basically just you want to stay like 50 feet away from any bathroom because the place is just you're going to get dysentery, you're going to get sick, and under those situations when water, medical supplies, and such are in short demand, that can be life threatening, and for a child, it can definitely kill them. So I'd say have spend $30, and now you got a way to use the bathroom so that your family doesn't get sick. So that's probably the first one.
That $30, is that one of those toilet seats that fits on a 5-gallon bucket, or what is that?
No, you don't want to get those. Those things are terrible. If you like falling over and being doused with a
with your own
bucket
poo?
full of poo and pee, you get one of those buckets.
Oh, okay.
Those things are terrible. I mean, because they work fine, I guess, if you're like on a concrete slab, but if you're on dirt or uneven ground, it's because it gets thinner at the bottom. That mug you'll tip over on it 100%. You shift your weight just a little bit, you're going over. We learned this the hard way. So the one I'm talking about is a little 3-legged one. It's a little 3-legged one, and then the legs fold up. It's about the size of a big set of yellow pages. Real easy to store, real easy, weighs nothing, and is cheap. And then you can put any plastic bag that you want in it. So, I mean, it's really, really simple to use. And, it's easier if you have children and things like that. But the important part is that you will not be exposing yourself to a bathroom used by dozens to hundreds of people, just spreading disease and all around it.
Okay, that makes sense. And, I think that's definitely one of those things. I'm glad that that's what you brought up first, because I think that's definitely one of those things that almost no one, people do think of it, but not enough. I don't think enough thought goes into it. And it's one of those things that's not sexy in the survival world, but, not dousing yourself with your own poo or sitting in someone else's petri dish is definitely, most of the time when we hear the after disaster horror stories, it's caused from human waste.
Yeah, it's always human waste. And the idea of having a toilet or something, like most people who are preppers, they'll have a portable toilet or some sort of thing for their home in case they lose power or water. But less people tend to think about that when they go on the road, when they have to go mobile, they have to abandon their home and to go a few states over, or even say, hey, we're going to a refugee center or we're going to our church. They got bathrooms there. No, the bathrooms are going to get clogged up almost immediately when you go there. So it's generally not something that people would think about, hey, I need to bring a portable toilet with me. And like I said, the fortunate thing is they're cheap. They're dirt cheap. You can buy from Walmart that and another $8 for a tarp, and you're good to go. And your family would thank you, and people will probably thank you. Probably make money off of it. Charge like $10 for anyone who wants to use it.
$5 extra for TP.
Yeah. But yeah, when I was in the road in Iraq, I mean, the old school way was like some of the older guys who mentored me and stuff. They were like, oh, you just pop and squat. Well, that's nice, but why not have a small comfort with you? And so that's when I started kind of studying the different portable toilets. They're fancier ones, more expensive ones than that. It's not worth the money. The 3-legged one from Walmart is fine. So, and while we're on the subject of poo and sanitation, the second thing that whenever I've been to a refugee camp, there's usually about the third thing. There's usually 3 things they ask for. It's always food, help with the toilet situation. I mean, the toilet thing. I mean, we built toilets. We've dug ditches. Toilets are always the number one thing. But the third thing they always ask for, they ask for bleach. They ask for bleach because I don't know if you've ever had like 5 or 6 buddies come over one night at your house for drinking. Have you seen your bathroom floor after that? I mean, it's pretty gross. At least maybe my friends are more gross than your friends. But imagine
my friends are filthy animals, so I totally understand.
Yeah, 50, 60, 100 people. I mean, everything is contaminated. Everything. It doesn't matter the outside of your car, other people's clothes. Everything is just gross and contaminated. So they always ask for bleach. Bleach is something that we have in our mobile kits that we always carry with us if we deploy stateside for natural disasters and things like that. It's easy to carry because you can get the powdered bleach that you use for pools. It takes up very little room. It's all you do is mix it with water, and it's extremely concentrated. But you basically just have to constantly bleach down everything, especially your toilets, your living areas. You can spray it on the ground. Another good alternative to bleach is vinegar. Vinegar is a natural antibacterial and cleaning solution, which is easier to find during emergencies and things like that. But just a bottle of bleach or a pint-sized packet of powdered bleach that you use for your pool.
So the powdered bleach actually works pretty well?
Oh, yeah, it's the exact same thing. It's just bleach that's concentrated and powdered. It's for the pools. You can go to any pool supplies place, and you can buy a bucket of it for cheap.
See, now, I've actually sat with somebody, and we navel-gazed about that, and we're pontificating about it, but I've never actually heard it used in the real world. So that's actually good to know that we were talking out our ass. We weren't completely talking out our ass.
Yeah, there was actually something that we looked into, and we consulted several subject matter experts over, because we're trying to figure out the easiest way to transport bleach throughout Kurdistan. And as far as like weight, water liquids just waste so much, and it takes up so much space, and it's easily punctured and things like that. So we looked into alternatives, and pool bleach was the alternative we came up to. It's the exact same thing, and it works great. It's just bleach in it. You can just take a little bit, put it in a bottle of water, shake it up, pop your knife, pop a little hole in the top, and spray it over anything that you want sanitized.
Cool. Okay. Good to know.
Just make sure and use the whole thing, or keep it with you so someone doesn't accidentally take a swig.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the biggest problems in all of these areas where you have large amounts of people gathering together who are unclean. It's diarrhea. Diarrhea is the big thing. If you look at Haiti, in any major refugee situation, I guarantee it's going to happen with these places in the South. Diarrhea is the biggest killer. Not only is diarrhea life-threatening, especially for older people and children, it beats you up. I've been in the field before with dysentery once. I've been in the field before with terrible diarrhea, and it's just it makes it very hard for you to complete the other things which you need to do, which is get water, get food, watch out for the health of your family, and help other people in your community. So if you're running the toilet every 5 minutes, or you're just so beat up, and you're also eating up tons of resources because you got to drink more water, you have to take more medication, then you're just becoming a drain on the area where you are. So it's basically keep clean. Keep clean is the number one thing. Avoid public toilets and used by hundreds of people, and bleach everything. Bleach or vinegar everything. So those are the main suggestions I have for shelter.
Hey, listener, do you get at least $3 of value out of ITRH every month? Well, you should see what we give to the Armada members. Check it out today by visiting itrh.net. Members get access to episodes a day early. And when you join, you'll receive an invitation to the secret ITRH Armada Facebook group, so you can chat about survival with myself and other Armada members all day long. Get a free copy of the book, Owning Your Survival, so you can have a plan and do it right. Access to our famous Bob and emergency kits on-demand class. Make that perfect bag. Learn what to obsess over, and more importantly, what not to obsess over. Our insane ammo inventory spreadsheet. You'll finally have instant access to knowing what you've got on hand at any time. Access to every episode ever produced by ITRH, including one with a famous knife maker, which was never aired. And that's just to name a few things. Remember to visit itrh.net to get more benefit and help the show stay safe and sound, which helps you stay safe and sound. Now, back to today's guest.
Next one, water. A lot of people have all these interesting ideas about, like, I also thought about when I first started doing this is I need to bring I bought a $800 Caden water filter and life straws and all these things. Water is more or less, as soon as there's a disaster, water gets shipped in. Water is going to be shipped in. It's going to be available. Maybe you'll have to sip water out of a puddle or something like that with a life straw. I'm sure some people have had it. But generally speaking, especially in the U.S., there's a lot of charitable organizations here. There's a lot of big companies who like to ship in water, Walmart, Budweiser, all those groups, plus a lot of aid groups. So you'll have access to water, but it's the thing that I noticed at first and became a logistical nightmare until I kind of figured things out was bottled water comes in bottled water, and the new bottled water that everyone makes now has a super thin bottles. It's not like the bottles they had like back in the day, 15 years ago, that were really, really thick, like soda type plastic bottles of water. Now it's these paper thin bottles of water that are more easily punctured, and you can't really stack as easily. So one of the things that I do is I have I will keep a case or something like that in my vehicle, which is a way for me to, hey, if someone's handing out water, or I can purchase water, which nobody's going to be able to purchase water on the road in, emergency life raft plastic bottles or containers or anything like that. It's always just commercially processed bottled water. So if you have this bottled water and you don't want it to get crushed, you got to have some sort of a hard container over it. In Iraq, Philippines, and here in the States, I always make sure and have one of those. I use a foldable crate. It's these little like plastic crates that you get, like you store stuff in. Mm-hmm. But they have these ones that just they fold down to like maybe 3 inches thick. You can put one of those in your car. It doesn't take up any room, and so when you get water, you can stack a bunch of water in it, and all the other stuff in your car won't crush it. Because if you meet anyone who's ever done work like I am, and you look at their bag before they go out to work, everything is in Ziplocs. The reason everything's in Ziplocs is because modern water bottles are crap, and people are going to throw a case of water on top of your stuff, throw something on top of that, and they're all going to burst because they're cheap. So you want to protect your water, which is something I don't think people think about when they're like, hey, I've got an emergency. I'm going to. And the other thing is, try carrying 12 bottles of water. It's a pain. It's dropping everywhere. You can't do anything. One drops, you go to pick up another. It's like a comedy sketch or something where you're picking up one and three or fall down. So at a minimum, you need something to carry it with. And the more you can carry, the more you can get. And then you can also protect and store your water too.
So is this crate that you were talking about that folds down, is it like a milk crate? Like the old-fashioned plastic milk crates?
Yeah, it's like a little fold-down milk crate. I'll send you a link, and you can post it in the show notes.
Okay,
they're not expensive at all. I've got a dozen of them. They're really cool, but they fold down like completely 3 inches maybe thick, but then they pop out to a full-size milk crate size.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
But you got to think, hey, when I go somewhere and I get 12 bottles of water, how am I going to carry it back? And also, if you want to think about security, who gets robbed? The person walking around with 4 bags of groceries in their arm. So you got a crate, put it underneath one arm, you have someone else carry it with you, and then you at least have one free hand. And then when you bring it back to wherever you're going to bring it back to, it's safe. It won't get punctured because you think, I lose 1 bottle of water. It's not a big deal. Yeah, it's a big deal when you have 4 bottles of water.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Food. So food is something that one of the things I really kept a lot of notes on when I'm doing humanitarian aid work, because in a place like northern Iraq, it's an interesting combination of people who are kind of stuck between both worlds. Their parents basically lived without electricity up into the 80s and were very, very basic living, very much like pioneers of America or rural America back in the 1800s, to their generation, which is a little more middle class, having electricity and refrigerators and things like that. So they're able to combine those two knowledges together when they were in some of these refugee camps that we were in. And there are a couple things I noticed. One, a lot of things I always thought you'd end up needing, like as far as food goes, weren't really things that were requested. Generally, what people want is oil, salt, and some sort of grain, whether it be flour or bulgur or cornmeal or rice or something like that. Oil, salt, and grain, you can pretty much live on forever. It's the basis for any other food. If you have oil, salt, grain, and some sort of grain, no matter what else you get 1 chicken leg, you get a little piece of meat, you find some ramps in the forest, you get a 1 can of tomato sauce. With oil, salt, and a type of grain, you can now make a meal for an entire family out of it. So yeah, good. Have some MREs and things like that, but for more long-term thinking, I'm not I'm not talking about a lot. Like a gallon Ziploc bag, some rice. Rice is always my favorite. Rice is really easy. It's easy to cook. It does require water, but most likely you'll have some sort of a water source. And if you can heat water to make rice, then you can make clean water. So you have some oil, some grain, some salt, and then whatever else you have, you can just throw it in and make a poor man's stew. So those are really the basic things I'd say that people can bring with them. It doesn't weigh very much, and I think the oil, salt, grain is a better thing maybe for your home. If you're in a situation like in the winter time where you have bad storms or other natural disasters, you need to hold out for a few days. You can hold out for a few days with oil, salt, and grain. The other thing I noticed is that in these refugee camps, which kind of surprised me, when they have perishables, like they get some eggs, they get some vegetables or things like that, they actually keep it in like an egg crate or some sort of a crate that has holes or slots in it, and they'll just stick it underneath the table. The reason they'll do this is because obviously closer to the ground you get, the cooler it is. And I guess it's probably common knowledge to anyone. Like my mom knew that because she grew up. I mean, they had an ice box when she was a kid. But keep perishable. It's always a thing, especially now. I guess everyone keeps perishables up. You take your vegetables and you put them on the counter in the container, or you put it on top of the microwave, or you put it in one of those hanging baskets. So I think people have the mindset to put vegetables and things like that in a high place. But when you don't have refrigeration and you need to last longer, putting it in a place with minimal sunlight, it's a little cooler, and also kind of out of the way is a good place to do it. So every single little camp we went to where it was an abandoned school or abandoned shopping mall, which they turned into a refugee or IDP center, every single little room we go to, there'd be a little milk carton, and it would be underneath the table in a dark corner where they would keep their fruit in. So it's kind of a little neat thing to kind of remember.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense, actually. Like if you're going to have to put it out open air, it makes sense that it should be down lower than putting it up high.
Yeah, which I guess is the reason for. I mean, everyone had the cellar. When back in the day, they would keep all their vegetables and their canned food and things like that. So, but they were telling me that they can, the food will stay fresh for a few more days, and a few more days, it's a big deal when that's the only tomato you have, or that's the only apple you have. So you want to make it last longer. Reason we in the West, because we have such a ample supply of food, we put it in the sunlight, in the light, so it will ripen faster, so we can eat it sooner. But in those situations, you want to retard the ripening of vegetables and fruit. Just a couple of food tips. Health. Now, this is one of my favorite subjects because it is one of the things that affects everyone, including my team members that go to places with me. And like if you have a team member go down and then you're short, especially when HACCP works in very small teams. So if we have one guy go down, it's a major issue. Also, it's the things that are always asked for when we go to camps, and some other observations I've had when we go to them. One of the big things is having enough toothpaste. You stop brushing your teeth for a few days, and it gets rough in there. And mouth is a petri dish. It's a disgusting place. It's as the old thing. It's like a human bite is worse than a dog's bite. But it's basically true. Your mouth is a pretty gross place, and if you don't start taking care of your teeth and gums, you get a gum infection. The gum infection then affects the roots. The roots start going bad, and then you're eating a lot of weird food. Your immune system is beaten up already. So it's a place where basically your whole mouth is essentially an open wound. And so if you're not cleaning that open wound every single day in this filthy environment that you're living in, it's a situation where you're going to get sick. Your mouth gets messed up, and the only way to fix anything, a cut in your mouth, a toothache, an infection. I mean, you just get a piece of food stuck in there, right? In a few days can start causing your mouth to go rancid. And the beautiful part is it's a really simple fix. have a toothbrush and a toothpaste with you. Always have that in whatever your emergency bag is or your emergency supplies. Make sure have a couple things of really good fluoridated toothpaste and a couple of toothbrushes. So, and I always throw in some floss too to make sure that you can take care of your teeth. Because I tell you right now, man, when I was in Iraq, there's a guy that got shot in the hand. And we were like, "Hey, bro, we can't get you out for like 3 or 4 days." And he was like, "Ah, that's fine. I'll just take Percocets." Another guy caught shrapnel all up and down his back. We were like, "Hey, we can't get you out till tomorrow." He's like, "No problem. I'll take some Percocets." Anytime a guy would have a tooth go south on him, and we'd say, "We can't get you to Dubai for a couple of days," they would say, I will pay $30,000 to charter a jet to get me the F out of here.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was like guys would be fine with anything. You have a tooth go south, man, you will do anything to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you imagine it, it's worse than a gunshot wound and shrapnel inside of it. That's how bad a tooth going south can be, literally, not even figuratively. So, because these are things I witnessed with my own eyes. So the last thing you want is your teeth to go south, and you also don't want to have a filthy mouth, which will cause you to get sick. So simple: toothbrush and toothpaste, enough toothpaste to last you, and a good, decent toothbrush. And brush your teeth, as your mom would say. The other big thing, this has been touched on by a lot of people before, but I like to kind of remind people because I say it a lot, and then I ask people a month later if they have done anything about it, and none of them have. It's have some powerful antibiotics on hand. You got to have it because there are certain things, you got a tooth that goes south, you got a bad cut, you get to tell you another Iraq story. I won't name the name of the company, but they had a house on the lake outside of Victory Airport, which was this whole fake lake that Saddam set up for all his generals and colonels, and Uday and Qusay and stuff had a house there. But it's basically a standing water lake. It looks nice, but I mean, it's a gross lake. It's just standing water, which is the same thing that you'll run into during natural disasters. I was over at this. It was a team house for another security contractor company. I was over there playing cards one night, and a bunch of the guys were joking around. There's some liquor being drank, and they threw one of the guys into the lake. Not a big deal. They thought it was funny. Turned out the guy had a small cut on his leg, and 2 days later, part of his leg had gone gangrene, and they had to chop him out of the country and take a baseball-sized chunk out of his leg. This was in a 3-day period from a small cut, barely a paper cut. So you imagine you look at this flooding situation, guess where all that water is going through and over? People's toilets, underground septic system, above ground septic systems. That water is like 12% poo easily. And then you combine animal feces into that, rat feces. It's full of rat poo in that water. So, and you have a small open wound. You take that cut, and good luck getting an ample supply of Cipro or a Z-Pack during an emergency like that, especially if you're stuck in some church, in some community center somewhere where they're having to take a boat to get in. And I tell you, even 12 hours behind on getting a good hit of antibiotics can be a matter of life and death. For a child and elderly person, it could easily just mean death for them. So some doctors, now a lot of people are like, how do I get antibiotics? How do I get a Z-Pack? How do I get Cipro? Obviously, I would never tell anyone to break the law. So there are options where you can ask your doctor. Some doctors will prescribe you that for emergency situations. You tend to have the best luck with those dock-in-a-boxes and strip malls that says I'm not putting any racial connotations in here, but if it says Si hablo español, it's about a 50% chance that they'll prescribe you almost anything you want. I don't know why. It just seems like kind of those type of dock-in-a-boxes, they kind of understand, because a lot of the immigrant population they're used to kind of treating things themselves. They don't go to a doctor, they go to a pharmacist. Very much like the pharmacists in the United States in the 1950s. You go to a pharmacist when you didn't feel good and tell him what was wrong with you, and then he'd say, "Hey, gonna prescribe you this. That's very much the way that it's still done in the third world. So generally, physicians who are used to treating people from the third worlds are a little more understanding. It's like, hey, I just want some antibiotics to treat myself. The other option are the fish and bird antibiotics. Those are completely legal to purchase as long as you're purchasing for your bird or your fish.
Of course.
Kind of funny thing is there's no such thing as a bird or fish physician, zoo doctor. So they kind of sneak through a little. It's like the law doesn't exist because that particular thing doesn't exist. So a lot of these fish antibiotics and bird antibiotics places you can buy online, and it's also perfectly legal.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that with like fish mocks and stuff like that. And usually the names are pretty close. And from what I understand, they're actually even made, they're pretty much just made in the same factory. It's just one goes in a bottle of fish mocks and the other one is, goes in a bottle of amoxicillin and gets a FDA thing slapped on the side of it and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's why it's expensive, is the FDA thing. But it's the exact same thing. The ingredients are the same. They make it in the same factory. As far as I can tell, there's no difference, and I've researched it pretty extensively. The other option is if you have to check your local, state, and federal laws, but in many instances, I know Canada, it's true, if you have a Canadian prescription, you can then come into the United States with your prescription, though you'll have to double check that. I'm not telling people if they go overseas to bring a buttload of antibiotics back with them, but I'm saying if it's legal where you are, it's certainly a good option for you.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, you gotta have some Z-Packs or some Cipro. You just have to have that. It doesn't matter what it is. Most guys, like a Z-Pack, every soldier carries a Z-Pack with them, because when they get shot and they're still alive, the biggest thing they got to worry about is your clothing has been sucking up all the filth that's been around you, and now that clothing's inside you. They put a quick clot on it, they put a tourniquet on it, then they take a Z-Pack. And so that's what you need to do when you get into a situation where you cut your arm and you accidentally dunk it in some of that rat poo water. You want to take that Z-Pack immediately to prevent yourself from getting sick. And if you get diarrhea, your Cipro will be your best friend, because that's about one of the only things that'll stop it if you get really, really bad diarrhea or dysentery. But regardless, and if you have children or elderly people that you might have to move to these places, you got to get some antibiotics. And it's never available when they need it. Whenever there's anything like this, like these disasters that happen, there's never enough, or there's a run on it, or it's just not available for that 12, 24 hour, 48 hour period before help comes in. And if you have an open wound for 48 hours, like the guy in that old team house in Iraq who got gangrene, 48 hours was all it took for them to have to take a baseball-sized chunk out of them of gangrene. So you want to be able to treat that immediately. Obviously, educate yourself on it. Speak to a physician. Learn some tutorials online. Learn what the dosages are. Obviously, always finish your dosages, but have antibiotics. That's the biggest thing. No matter what happens, take a Cipro and you'll be good. Health. The last one I have for health. This is something that is it's a touchy subject for a lot of people who are either religious like myself, or who are, it's one of those things you don't really think about until you think about. But let's say you're at this FEMA center or some other shelter, or you just got a hotel, or you managed to get lucky, you got a hotel room 30 miles away from where your house is, where it's already flooded in, and now you got 24 hours of just sitting around doing nothing. If you're married, if you have a girlfriend, I'm willing to bet at least an hour or two of that day what you're going to end up doing with your time is, and you can probably imagine that happens in every single IDP camp I go to, and then people get pregnant during these times of emergencies. Not only that, during the times of unlawfulness, after natural disasters like we saw during Katrina in New Orleans, and a couple other cities, there are a lot of issues with rapes happening and things like that. So in my bug out, I don't have a bug out bag. I have a mobile scout bag or a mission bag. I don't really like the bug out bag term, but in my medical kit, my clinical medical kit, I have the day after pill. I have a couple dosages of that. and I have just standard birth control pills. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get pregnant, but these are things that you don't want to get knocked up when you might be living in a FEMA camp or a church shelter or anywhere like that for the next week. It's a week or 2 weeks or month. Maybe your house is gone, so now you're going to be living in a hotel for the next 3 months while you're fighting with your insurance company. Combined with that stress leads us for a lot of complications. It's just not the time to get pregnant. And I saw a lot of these refugees getting pregnant in these camps during pretty much the worst time you ever could. And it's not something people think about, but it's something that you should definitely have. You need to have contraceptives, either pills or condoms that you put on your bag. Now, I know some of the single guys here, if their wives or girlfriends see them having condoms in their bags and stuff like that, it can lead to an interesting conversation. So you definitely want to have it beforehand. Unlike myself, who came back from a mission, was in front of the last girl I dated. We were dating for a while, and she's helping me pull all the stuff out of my bag and then do an inventory, see what I need to replace. And 5 condoms falls out, and I have to start screaming, "No, it's not for me!" So, you might need to forewarn people. But yeah, in a serious note, have the morning after pill. It's the last thing somebody wants to have to do, whether it's one of your loved ones or someone else, maybe where you're staying at the shelter or disaster center, somewhere like that. If there's a rape, the last thing someone wants to have to deal with is possible pregnancy from their rapist. So I keep a few packs of morning after pills in my medical kit. Now, that's a choice. I understand that's a very personal choice. Some people have moral objections against it, and I get it. But for those of you who want to kind of be realistic about the way things are in the world and the way things are during times of civil unrest, after natural disasters, I would very much suggest that you get it. Any doctor will prescribe it to you. It's not one of those things you got to make a big story about. It's like, I need to grab a couple morning after pills. Easy to go get. They're relatively inexpensive. So, toothpaste, toothbrush, antibiotics, and some kind of birth control, including the morning after pill. Those are the 3 things that I would definitely have any sort of health kit that you would take with you.
See, now that's interesting because a lot of those items I don't think are mentioned very often in the community. I mean, condoms are mentioned, but it's usually in the context of other MacGyver-esque things you can do with condoms other than their intended purpose.
Which are all silly that you can do with like a Ziploc. I never really got most of that.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like to shove a tampon in a gunshot wound.
Oh,
it's like,
worst
I got
advice
goals.
ever, yeah.
I don't need a tampon.
It's not that kind of bleeding. Don't shove it in my hole. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, don't shove that in me, dude. I got an Israeli bandage. You need to calm down. Let me see. The last one I'd like to touch on is real simple. It's logistics. I say this a million times and no one does it. Have a plan. Everyone has a plan in their head. I'm not talking about a plan in your head. Have a plan that you write down on a piece of paper. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do if I have to evacuate my home. This is what I need to do. This is where I'm going to go. This is the secondary location where I need to go. This is how much gas it'll take. These are places I can stop and get fuel. Have a plan. Even if it's just, hey, get in my Prius, drive to my mom's house, pick her up, and then just start heading as far away from the flood or whatever as I can. Just have that plan, have it written down, know what you're going to do, because so much time is lost on the I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's simple. Have a plan. Know what you're going to do. Write it down. Don't just put it in your head, because in your head it gets too jumbled. Write it down. Have a checklist. Go check. I got my fold up milk carton for a bottle of water. Check. I'm the king of checklists. I love checklists. The reason I love them is because I can't remember squat, especially when there's a ton of stuff going down, and it's dummy proof. And I can be a big dummy at times. So if I can dummy proof it against myself, which is usually the first person to mess up, then it'll work for anyone. Checklists are the way to go. So I have a checklist: shelter, portable toilet in the car, check. Bottle of bleach or bleach powder in the car, check. Water, I got a fold up milk carton case, check. Food, I got some basics with me, check. Health, I got toothpaste, 2 things of toothbrush, check. Antibiotics, Z-Pack, check. Birth controls, check. And then where am I going to go? I'm going to go A, B, C, and my alternates are D, E, F. That's all you need to do, because when you're running out of your house, because like my friend who had to abandon their house, that was an hour. They had an hour. They were like, oh my God, the river's rising really fast. I have 1 hour to leave. You're running around with like a chicken with your head cut off. You don't know, do I grab this? Do I grab that? What do I do? Blah, 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 blah. If you have a checklist of everything you need to do in case of an emergency, then you don't forget anything. Because I tell you, I don't know how many times. I know guys who've run out and like, okay, we got a mission right now. Let's go. They forget their pistol. They forget magazines. They forget just ridiculous stuff. Mm-hmm. That's why you got to have a checklist. So have a plan with a checklist. The last one is have cash on hand. Nobody has cash anymore. I understand we're in a cashless society. I don't like using cash, which is it's just a personal thing for me. My dad taught me to, whenever you buy something, you need to kind of feel the sting. So I like to use cash, but in business for DVM or the purchasing things with HACCP, because we've got a lot of records to maintain. I use cards for that just because it's easier than saving 10,000 receipts in a big plastic bag that just gets jumbled. So many people don't have any cash. I mean, like I know millionaires who have $12, $13 cash maybe outside of their bank. Mm-hmm. If you need to go somewhere, if you I guess, like, I mean, I just recently drove from Virginia to Vegas. 2 of the gas stations we stopped at, the credit card machines were down. Guess who are the only people who could buy gas? Me, because I had cash with me. Everyone else had to go to the next gas station. So everyone will accept cash, and during times of natural disasters, civil unrest, things like that, the chances of the credit card system being down, which, by the way, a lot of people don't know this, when you do pay at the pump, that system is actually, majority of the time, it's a cellular system. It pre-approves your credit card by cellular modem connection. So if, during natural disasters, how many people, I mean, you try to ever get on the phone during a natural disaster, it's all lines are busy. That happens to the gas pumps too. So the gas pumps don't work. They can't take anything. You got $12. Well, okay, you got $12. You can get three gallons of gas, but after that, what are you going to do? And when it comes to being mobile, at any supply point, you pack in as much as you can. So you'll need to get gas, food. I mean, every service station everywhere has food, but if their credit card machine's down because of the network, then you can't buy anything unless you have cash. So I understand, a lot of people, especially these days, the economy isn't so hot. It's hard to keep money around. But I would say, if possible, I mean, you should have $1,000. I'm just saying, if you don't have $1,000, then you need to get a part-time job or something. I mean, you're a grown-ass man. But you need to have $1,000 in cash in 20s as part of the whatever you'll take with you. $1,000 will get you across the country in a vehicle. It'll 4 people across the country in a vehicle, eating food, staying at hotels on the way. You can go anywhere in America with a vehicle on $1,000. And as there's going to be some news stories coming about this pretty soon, but federally, banks are not legally allowed to stay closed for more than 3 days, even if it's in a disaster. But there's shenanigans going on, which are going to come out in the news for this. I can't really get into it, but there's shenanigans going on where it appears banks are open, but they are virtually open. They're not actually open, so you can't go there, but you can go there. There's some weird stuff. So you can't go to your bank. You can't get money. You can't go anywhere without money. You can't get food. You can't get gas. You can't do anything. So have some money on hand.
That's kind of freaky with the banks, but yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the basic advice that I've learned from my experience working in areas of natural disaster, war zones, of massive refugee situations. Those are kind of the I think the lesser known little things I picked up along the way. So I hope that people are listening. It'd be something that they can use, and with the 100,000 people now homeless right now, at least temporarily homeless, I'm sure if any of those GUP folks are listening, they might say, I should have had one of those things. Well, now listen to this podcast and write down everything I said with a little box next to it. And the next time something happens, check down that box as you leave the house, and hopefully you'll be all right. You'll be good to go for the next disaster that happens. Or if it never happens, at least you'll have peace of mind.
That's all great stuff. And I think some of it really confirms thoughts I've had over the years and conversations I've had, but they've all been hypotheticals. And some of them are actually quite surprising and things I had never thought of before. That's really great stuff. So now this is all pretty interesting. And I think that relates back to this was all born out of your experiences and dealing with refugee situations. And a lot of that has come from HACCP. So tell us about that for a second. What are you doing with that?
HACCP, originally, I did mobile work, or mobility team work in Iraq. I did a lot of armed courier work for a bunch of different agencies in Iraq. And also, I lived in the third world for a long time. I've done a lot of E&Es and a lot of exfils and things like that during civil unrest or coups overseas. And I picked up as like Liam Neeson would say, I don't have much, but I have a very unique set of skills.
Yeah.
So I got this unique set of skills that will either give you a really, really good job at Home Depot, or you can still do security contracting until you're really, really old and you're on your fourth divorce. Or, some guys go back and they retrain, or they go back to the EP business. But I knew I had this unique logistical skills, which that's all anything is logistics. But my logistic skills are very specialized in war zones, disaster areas, and times of massive civil unrest. And I figured Typhoon Yolanda in the Philippines happened, and I had a lot of friends in the Philippines, and I was hearing about these aid groups. They couldn't get certain areas because Maoists still exist in the Philippines. I guess they still think that's going to happen. But so the Maoist groups were holding up aid convoys, and the aid convoys, they just stopped. They were like, well, we can't get through because it's too dangerous. What I was thinking is, man, I brought stuff from Kuwait through Baghdad all the way up to Erbil in northern Iraq. It's like you can get stuff anywhere. It's just you got to have a little bit of a show of force. And there are currently, at least I don't know of any. There might be. I think there maybe is one or two smaller ones, but there aren't any aid groups that are armed or willing to hire armed security and be very, very, how should I say, aggressive with their intention to deliver aid to those in need. And I saw a need for that in the Philippines, so I went there, got some machine guns, and people knew by our show of force that we weren't really someone to try to. Our aid convoy was not the aid convoy to try to jack, unless you wanted to get a divorce shoved up your behind. So that really well. And some of the other aid groups, we ended up running a lot of supplies for other aid groups, because they're like, hey, we really want to deliver supplies here, but we have no security. We're not allowed to be armed. We're not allowed for this and that. And so we ended up helping those groups. So I had an idea. I was like, hey, this is a concept I've kind of proven. Let me see if we can do more missions. And then ISIS happened, and I'd done hundreds of missions in logistical missions, PSD, convoy, courier work in Kurdistan and northern Iraq. I know the area well. I know a lot of indigenous contacts. And so I thought, well, how about I move doctors and supplies around, use those same techniques. And so we arrived in Iraq, and it was kind of funny. As my team was arriving, they were actually, it's one of my favorite stories. They actually passed all the other aid groups leaving.
Oh, wow.
And so one of the guys said, we know we're in the right place when we see all the other aid groups leaving, including USAID, who chickened out. So we arrived. There was maybe one or two other groups. I believe it was CRI was there, maybe one or two other religious-based organizations were there, but they're very small, and that was it. I mean, there's no one else. No one was going into these areas, and no one was going around town because these groups, they didn't, they show up and they go to the main big camp. That's great. They're already getting a ton of supplies, but with our small team where we do things, we thought, well, hey, let's get some local nationals, some local folks, have them go around the city and on a motorbike and just find these little camps with 100 people in them, which are getting no help. So we did that. Obviously, we're armed for work like that up there, and that allowed us to be there when no other aid group really could be there. We went back there again 2 more times. We're getting ready to go back a 4th time, and we've also now kind of branched out into some other aid groups and missionary groups and things like that. They want to do work in a lot of these dangerous countries, but they're not security conscious, and they know they're not security conscious. So instead of having to train up one of their own people or having to really worry about it, they now contact us and they say, hey, can you send a PSD team down with our people? They're going to the favelas and barrios in Honduras. Can you have a team? So then we're able to send our guys, our mission PSD guys, out there with them so that they can do their work, concentrate on doing their work, whether it's dentistry or medical or aid work, without having to really be concerned about the security side of things. Combined with, we have a talk where we can track people and have comms and have real-time intelligence. So we can add a capability to other aid groups. Basically, it's kind of like a private military company or a private security company, but we serve the humanitarian aid world, and we're nonprofit. And then we also do our own missions. Like, we're getting ready to go back to northern Iraq. The Kurds and the Iraqi army, they're getting ready to go into Mosul, and there's a big issue there with the Kurds especially. They don't really have any decent combat medics, and they don't have, outside of their special forces, Gulen special forces, and a couple of Zervanis. But besides that, the regular troops, the regular Kurdish Peshmerga, they don't really have a lot of like combat lifesaver training, and more importantly, they don't have the supplies. They don't have tourniquets. They don't have quick clot, nor the knowledge to use them. So this next mission, we're going to go up there and bring a bunch of quick clot and other medical supplies, along with hopefully a dentist, and to kind of help them, because I tell you, like I said before about the toothbrush and toothpaste, one of the number one things they ask for is like, do you have doctors? Like, yes. Are any of them dentists? They're always asking for dentists. So hopefully we can get some teeth fixed for the Peshmerga, also help out the refugees in the refugee camps. Basically what we're trying to do is heal and help those who are protecting the Christian and the Yazidi refugees up there. So basically help those who are helping others so that they can do their job and be safe at it, and which is the overall. Without security, you can't have stability. Without security, you can't have hospitals. Without security, you can't have food. You can't have logistics. You can't have anything. So we've gone from a emergency response or rapid response team to, hey, let's start doing a couple things in northern Iraq. It's very vested up there at this time. Let's try to work with some long-term planning. Let's help them get some of their medics squared away. Let's help the NPU, which is the Christian militia. Let's help them get a little more squared away so that they can protect their people, because the less targets and the less times people have to go on the road fleeing from people, then it's less work for us and other aid groups to go. So we're trying to do a little bit of preventative work on this next mission. So what we're very, very excited about it. We're very excited that we have our 501c3 tax-free designation from the IRS. So all donations are now, it makes a big difference in everything. It adds legitimacy. We also have third-party financial oversight. We don't get any of the money that anyone donates. It goes to our third-party fiscal sponsor. They have the money, they hold it, and then we have to go before their board and say, this is the mission that we're planning to do. This is how we're going to spend the money. And then they say, okay, that's a responsible way to spend your donor's money. Here's the donor's money. You better bring us receipts and video every time you spend any of it. We do that. And so it gives our sponsors and donors just a peace of mind knowing that, hey, not only are we going to spend your generous donations responsibly, there's someone looking over our shoulder to make sure that we do, so we don't make any mistakes with your money.
Yeah, there's oversight and transparency into what y'all are doing.
Yeah, which I think, I don't understand why more nonprofits don't do that. I guess because they pay a lot of salaries. We, of course, pay no salaries.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody that works for HACCP gets any salary. We support ourselves by the commercial side of DVM and DVM Training Center and the stores and stuff we do with that. But yeah, it's all the money goes to missions, which is something that we're really proud of because it's not easy to do, especially when there are 3-4 full-time people now here at DVM.
Mm-hmm.
And so, everything's centered around us doing missions, but they get no salary for that. So, but it's something I'm proud of. I don't like the idea of spending donor money to pay someone $100,000 a year to do something. I mean, I figure if you're not smart enough to make a few bucks on your own, then you're probably not smart enough to be running the NGO in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It would feel weird for me to say buy a pizza from my salary that could have gone to helping people out of when someone donated that money with the intention to help people. Mm-hmm. But here I am buying a pizza and beer with my boys with the money. I don't know. That leaves a kind of a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, that's kind of in poor taste. So how do people connect with you? How do people find out more about what you're doing and donate to the cause?
Well, they can go to www. If anyone people don't say www anymore, do they?
They don't.
I still call it the internet, the interwebs. And everyone looks at me stupid when I say that. So it's like, is it that Twitter book on the interwebs, kids? So, it is dvmhasf.org. And that's our little website that we have. We have all of our past missions up there and ways that you can help us. There's a few ways. I mean, donations are always great because these missions, the more money we get, the more people we can help. I mean, it's pretty much that simple. There's also, we have a wish list on Amazon there, which is equipment we use or equipment that we give off. So some people aren't as comfortable with giving cash, but they don't mind giving like a physical donation of something. So that'll work. Though that's equally appreciated as anything else. But yeah, just go to dvmhasf.org, and that's pretty much our story. You can get in contact with us there. We're on Facebook. Our Facebook link is there. I don't know it right off the bat, but
I'll put it in the show notes.
2 plugs. One is for the other stuff that we do with DVM. DVM, it's still a lot of cool articles. So you can go to dvmusa.com, and anything you purchase there, or even just spend time on the site and help us out with our site stats or buy a cool patch or something like that. It is a socially responsible company. We use that money basically to pay the rent where we run all the nonprofit stuff out of. So go check that out. The second one is I want to throw a shout out to Jim and Karen Fuller at Rifle Dynamics. They have always been a very, very generous supporter of DVM and HACCP especially. They recently hosted us to come down to their headquarters there in Vegas, and we did a AK-74 build with them. Learned a lot of knowledge that'll help us when we're back in Iraq, learning the weapon systems and things like that. And as always, Jim and Karen and the whole RD crew, they are extremely generous with us, like uncomfortably generous with us. So it's one of those businesses, guys in the tactical world and the industry, and I'm sure you've heard rumors about people. There are a lot of really horrible people in this industry that are just. Jim Fuller is like the only guy in the industry that is just like a genuinely a nice guy, which you don't see not only in this industry in general, but just in life in general. He's a good guy, good American, started a small business, ended up becoming really successful, and created a market for high-end AK-47s, which I now own one. So I've always wanted my Rifle Dynamics AK, so I finally got an AK. Actually, I bought 3. I got greedy.
Very cool.
But I tell you, if anyone, I don't know what their schedule is right now, but if you want to know that the AK-47 weapon systems inside and out and have a great time, meet some great people in his shop and Jim himself, definitely take one of the Rifle Dynamics build classes. They're at rifledynamics.com, and they're out of Vegas, and definitely like their Facebook page. But if you got money, if you want to buy a real AK-47, or if you just want to support, they are a great group of people who have been extremely generous to our missions, and I hope everyone, all your listeners, will support them. And I'll be posting an article about the build class and some videos of me shooting the AK-74 I built, so you'll get to see what a real high-end AK-47 is like.
Cool. Well, James, as always, I sure appreciate you coming on and sharing your wonderful knowledge with us today. I hope that no one ever has to use it, but if they do, I'm sure it will all come in handy.
I hope so, too. I hope that nothing else, they'll have people think a little bit more about the way that they prepare themselves for any future things. Exactly. I was going to ask you one thing. I noticed there are a lot more members on the Roving Horde Armada now. It seems to be getting really popular. It is. It's coming up. It's coming along, and we're having lots of fun and shenanigans in there. And you even pop in and say howdy to everybody and get involved in the shenanigans from time to time. So we're all having a good time there. Cool, man. Well, I'll tell you what. We're actually working with some video people. We're getting ready to start to do videos and things like that. But I'll try to make a neat video, some sort of survival related thing for you all to put on your the Roving Horde membership. Oh, very cool, man. We sure would. Be a little bonus for folks. Nice. I sure would appreciate that. Well, James, as always, man, thanks for being on, and we'll have to do it again sometime soon and not be such strangers. Definitely, man. And hey, tell Jason he needs to be on more. I don't care if he's got a baby or not. Will do. Show notes, resources, and links from this episode can be found at intherabbithole.com/E191. Don't forget to support the show and get great membership benefits. Visit itrh.net for more details. And with that, we wrap up episode number 191 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.